Hello, and welcome to today's 46th webinar in the On the Move webinar series, Bring Fast Issue Resolution into View with Remote Video Enablement, brought to you by Honeywell Intelligrated. I'm Tracy Niehaus, Director of Marketing for Honeywell Intelligrated, and I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. You may ask an online question at any time throughout today's presentation in the Q&A feature on your screen. Simply type your question into the text area and hit submit. Questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation, with the exception of technical questions that can be asked and will be answered real time. Please note that we recommend that you be hardwired when attending this webinar. The Wi-Fi connection may result in lag time in slides updating and graphics loading. Today's webinar will include polling questions. Please feel free to answer these questions when they appear, and be sure to click submit so we can include your response, as we will be sharing the results real time during this live event. If you'd like to revisit key sections of today's webinar, it will be available on demand at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section in a few days after this live event. You'll also receive an email with the link to the recorded event. Now on to the presentation, Bring Fast Issue Resolution into View with Remote Video Enablement. Discussing today's topic will be Mike Kelton, Business Development Manager for Honeywell Intelligrated. Mike brings an electrical engineering and technical sales background to his role managing business development for software and controls in Honeywell Intelligrated Lifecycle Support Services. In his current position, he is responsible for supporting a team of lifecycle sales engineers as a subject matter expert in software, controls, and connected solutions. Prior to joining Honeywell Intelligrated, Mike handled hydraulic sensors and IoT technical sales at Parker Hannifin. And with that introduction, the webinar will now begin.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. This is Mike Kelton. Again, I'm a Business Development Manager, and I'm going to be leading the discussion today. So a little bit of introduction. Technology is advancing rapidly. I mean, that's an obvious statement. We've had that for years, we could say, but especially in wearable devices and virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality type devices, the technology is advancing very rapidly, which is leading to increased levels of productivity and creativity in enterprise and personal consumer situations. So I wanted to get off to a good start with talking about the different types of reality. And so it's kind of a, interesting discussion when you're talking about reality. What is reality? It's almost like a matrix type question. What is real? But it's an interesting thing to really differentiate here. So when it comes to devices in the virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality world, there is a clear separation between how the different devices are used. So first off, there's virtual reality. And this has the most visibility among consumers. So this is what has been around for a couple years. People are pretty, they know what they look like, the devices, when they sit on your face. And then it really fully encapsulates all of the senses of the user. So it's a full artificial environment. It's a device that actually can completely immerse yourself or immerse the consumer into a virtual environment. And so, and we'll get into a little of the details of how each one of these works. Augmented reality is where, often abbreviated AR, is where virtual objects are overlaid onto a real-world environment. So think of like heads-up display, or utilizing a device that is in the real world, but it's augmenting through a viewfinder of some sort. So through a camera or through a device, is going to augment the view through that view. So again, real world is enhanced with digital objects. So this is the most accessible for consumers. You can download free apps on your smartphone, and you can actually kind of see how AR really works. A good example of this is Pokemon Go. It's a game, obviously, on your smartphone, but that is utilizing AR technology. And then lastly, there's mixed reality, or also abbreviated MR. So this is where it's really actually blending the two to utilize a virtual environment combined with the real world. And so I'll get into the devices that do that, but it's a little bit of a mix where you can still see the real world through the fully immersed viewfinder. So it's really a blend of both. with that, we'll get to our first polling question. So the first question is, are you using any type of reality in your DC today? And then we'll let some of the results come through. I do believe you can fill out the this on the polling question that is on your screen, so you can click it. We'll leave this open for about 30 seconds to a minute. We'll just kind of see what the results kind of come through here. A couple results coming in already. That's great. Still coming in. Good mix of everyone using all different types. It's looking good. All right, so there's some of the results that came in. So obviously none of the above is the most prevalent, and that makes sense. The technology is still relatively new, but we are seeing some people on the call using all sorts of types here. So virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. People are definitely using the different types. So we'll get into more details about what those different types are, and then kind of explain the uses in enterprise solutions. All right? Okay. So virtual reality examples. So this is, again, like I said, is the most available and most what people are most familiar with. It's in fact actually what most people think of when they hear VR, AR, MR. They just think they go immediately to VR. So some of the devices that are available are HTC Vive, Oculus Quest. You know, if you have a PlayStation, you can get the PlayStation VR. There's a Steam headset. There's a lot of different types out there, and the technology is rapidly increasing. And so again, you know, Facebook's Oculus, HTC Vive are the two most prevalent ones out there. It's mainly used for gaming, but with that being said, we're finding actually enterprise use scenarios for these devices, including utilizing them for simulators. That's a big thing where you're actually immersed in the complete environment where you can actually utilize it for a simulator. Video production as well. It's used, you know, making movies, but also just utilizing environments in general, transporting yourself into an environment to be able to explore kind of what that view looks like. And then lastly, actually CAD development. So utilizing computer-aided design, you know, AutoCAD and different software like that can actually utilize VR headsets that you can kind of zoom around in a virtual space, the design that you've created. So some of the augmented reality hardware, again, this is a little bit different. It's more of a glasses style, or it can be used on your device. So you can see on the screen there a couple different ones that are there. The most common one that people are familiar with is Google Glass. Google Glass came out actually 6 or 7 years ago at this point, but it was a little bit ahead of its time. It never really took off in the consumer space. But in the enterprise space, it's definitely been ramping up. So there's the Vuzix M400. That's the one we'll get into a little bit later, what we use. Vuzix Blade, that's where the glass is here at the bottom. It's much more of like just a regular glasses set, whereas the lenses are on the front. It's just kind of a heads-up display type thing. There's no other cameras taking inputs from the external world. It's just displaying something on those screens. The RealWear HMT1, that's the more robust version here with the hard hat. And they actually like to term theirs a wearable tablet, but it's an AR device. And then, yeah, your iOS and Android phone can actually be utilized as an augmented reality device. You know, for example, this is just a picture of like an IKEA app that's just showing furniture within the space. Like I said earlier, Pokemon Go uses the same thing. So you can see where it's just real-world space in the background, and there's nothing there, but we're utilizing the camera to input the a virtual or an augmented, essentially, view of what that product or something would be there. So that's utilizing AR technology. You might also hear a subset called assisted reality, and that's really pulling it back a little bit more, where it's not utilizing placing things in the environment through the viewfinder. It's just a heads-up display. So again, these are mainly used for enterprise use. There's very little consumer use. You're not seeing a lot of these around in consumer usage. Google tried to do that with Google Glass, and it just didn't really take off, and it still hasn't gotten there yet. But in enterprise situations, it's definitely being used not only from us, but also from many other companies as well. And then mixed reality. And so this is really the most futuristic of any of the devices at this point. There's very few out there, but there are a couple. So the main one is Microsoft HoloLens. They've been really pushing development, and that's the one here on the bottom. And there's also something called the Magic Leap one. It looks a little bit more futuristic here at the top, but you can see all of the different cameras inputting, and same here on the HoloLens, that's inputting the external environment, and then it's placing the virtual reality objects, so the 3D objects, into that space. And so it's really using the best of what virtual reality brings and the augmented reality brings. So it's really that mixed reality. The trick is here, it's still very much in development. It's got a little ways to go in terms of full-fledged use in the enterprise space. And then also the hardware is rapidly increasing as well. And so it's taking some time to get out there, but it definitely has some very functional uses in enterprise space. So with that, we'll get to our next polling question. So where do you see the use of wearable devices such as AR or VR or MR utilized in the most in DC applications? So the first option is picking or fulfillment. Second option, field service. Third option, design. Or the last option is other. You can go ahead and click your screen now, and we'll leave it up for about 60 seconds again, just similar to the last poll question. Seeing some results come in. That's looking good. The answers are kind of skewing towards how I thought it would be, but so here's the results. So the main result was picking and fulfillment, which makes a lot of sense. That's where we've seen a lot of the AR solutions come from. Field service in second with 37%, and then design with 12%. So it's obvious that picking and fulfillment is definitely the most visibility in how it's used. And we'll get into how we use it here in a moment. But yeah, thanks for those answers. So I wanted to give a little bit of history and context to just the AR, VR, MR kind of discussion before we get into where we're utilizing it. So Gartner, which is a kind of trendsetter in understanding future-facing technologies, put out a report in 2018 called the Gartner Hype Cycle. They actually do it every year, but this is 2018's in particular. And it's really pushing forward that future-facing technology. So innovation and understanding, okay, how long is it going to take to get to a point where we're at productivity with a particular innovation? So you'll actually see in 2018 that augmented reality was actually in the trough of disillusionment. Well, what that means is that, so usually there's an innovation trigger and the hype gets really high, it's very exciting, and a lot of advancement happens. Peak of inflated expectations ultimately means that, okay, it's so hyped that it's never going to meet those expectations, and so it starts to kind of fall back down. And it's into that trough of disillusionment where it's like, okay, well, maybe we just hyped it way too much. Well, you'll notice in 2018, augmented reality was actually in the trough of disillusionment, and mixed reality was kind of getting there as well. Now, this is, 2.5, 3 years ago, and so, where are we now? Well, the point is we want to get back to the slope of enlightenment. Yeah, this really does have a great use in enterprise space or consumer space, to a point where it gets to the plateau of productivity, which ultimately means, all right, we're productive with this device and it's really making a lot of sense in the environment. So, like I said, in 2018, you'll notice it was in just the bottom of the hype cycle, and it's like, okay, this has been out, it's following. In 2018, it was really a couple of years after Google Glass tried to use it in the consumer space, and it really wasn't taking off, and so it's like, okay, is this really a device that we can get through into the productivity plateau? Well, you'll notice in 2019 it's not even on the list at all. And so that's actually a good sign, because that means it's actually coming out of the trough. Because the way that the hype cycle works is it's actually looking at just future-facing technologies. If it's already past that, that means it's already a solid technology in the workspace. So again, you'll notice it's not even on here. And so then by 2020, again, the point is, I think we're here. We're at the plateau of productivity. We're noticing productivity with the devices, as well as, we've heard from other applications that it's definitely being used in everyday space. So, Gartner is not going to publish, you'll notice there's nothing out here, out on the two last options. That's because it's purely innovation and it's on the front end. But on the actual operational standpoint, yeah, we're already there in the plateau of productivity. You'll notice it's something coming up also on the innovation trigger and the hype cycle is AI augmented development, and that ultimately means that utilizing AI in an AR space, VR space, to really develop and show usage through the productivity with AI. And so we're getting there. I mean, you can definitely see these are very future-facing technologies. A few ones that were added this year for obvious reasons: social distancing technologies. Well, for obvious reasons in 2020, that makes sense, in 2021 as well. And so they haven't published the 2021 yet. But the point I'm trying to make here is that ultimately we see ourselves utilizing these devices, and we feel that the space is definitely in the plateau of productivity at this point as we roll out more and more devices. So video enablement and how we utilize the actual AR device. So in 2018, when we were in that trough, we decided to launch Techsite, which is the beginning of a vision for hands-free remote troubleshooting. And so, paired with multiple devices, utilizing your phone, everything like that, as well as a full connected services suite, which you can hear on different webinars and different items, we're driving Techsite to be that video enablement service. So you can see here, this is the brochure that we've published for it. So what is Techsite? It's a video-enabled technical support solution. So we're utilizing those AR glasses to really utilize that heads-up display and that forward-facing camera to give that first-person view, that see what I see aspect. So again, it's a hands-free augmented reality option. And so what that allows for is that you can, as a field maintenance tech or someone working in the field in a distribution center, you can be working on a issue, you can be solving the problem, and you can be walking around talking to a technical support expert in a first-person view with both of your hands available to actually solve the problem. So again, utilizing that first-person view, and we're utilizing the glasses as a heads-up display to be able to send schematics, send pictures, send anything we need documentation-wise from a technical support standpoint to the user wearing the glasses that's actually solving the problem in the field. So it's that live remote troubleshooting aspect. What that can do, quickly diagnose critical issues, right? A picture is 1,000 words. I mean, video, live stream, it's incredible for actually solving problems, especially when it's a situation where the tech support engineer can see, oh, well, that's your problem right there. And then they can solve it right there and have it basically bring up the system as fast as possible. But we're really trying to decrease the unplanned downtime. I mean, that's really the main thing that we're trying to reduce, and the AR glasses and AR technologies have really allowed us to do that. It's also a reduction in required maintenance skills. What that ultimately means is that the person wearing the glasses on the other end does not have to be fully an expert on the product that they're fixing. The full expert can be guiding them as they solve that problem from the other end. Again, subject matter expert access from anywhere. That's ultimately what it is. And then we've noticed, obviously, from the pandemic last year into this year, we can definitely reduce costly travel. We can actually eliminate travel and utilize it in situations where there's a travel ban, per se, to actually still solve problems remotely. So it's really driving home that show me, don't tell me aspect of technical support and field service. So the question earlier, where do you see devices used? We use it in the field service space and the remote troubleshooting space. And this is just an example, by the way, of what it looks like from our end. This is one of our line sorters here, and this is an example of where we're sending a picture of one of the shoe sorters slats and being able to draw on the device and kind of really show and annotate what the issue is. So steps to success. Like, how do we go from here? Where do we go to actually get these utilized into the enterprise space or in your distribution center any faster? So to begin the journey to digital transformation with the usage of wearables, it's driving towards faster and increasing productivity. So we need to create a strong business case, and that's really shown by, again, the downtime that we can prevent, as well as the usage of increased productivity really shows a strong business case of how this device can be used. Start small and clearly define the scope. I mean, again, one device with one person in one situation is really that starting small and defining that scope, making sure we have, clear internet connectivity. Again, it is utilizing web stream services to actually pull back that live video. So we're trying to start small and define that scope. And then also lastly, you just want to build a team. You want to build a team that's going to be psyched about utilizing the devices in your distribution center. And then also from our end, we're going to help you get to that innovation side where we're going to be hyped about it too when you're using it in your distribution center. So those are the three main steps, and it's kind of a cycle there. You're going to continue to reevaluate the business case, make sure it continues to solve the problems that we want to solve, and then also increase the productivity that we want to increase, and then it's just going to keep cycling over and over and over. So with that being said, that was a very quick overview and description of the different types of devices that are out there, the different types of reality, but then also where we see the industry going, and then how we are currently using the industry. We have some tests as well with HoloLens and that sort of thing, so we're definitely looking into that mixed reality, that future-facing technology still. But with that being said, we can definitely open it up for some questions. So you can fill it out in the Q&A in the chat below, as well as we got some questions as well coming in.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Great presentation. And as Mike mentioned, we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of our event. And as a reminder, you can ask an online question in the Q&A feature on your screen. And we do already have some questions that have come in, Mike, so I will go ahead and get started with those. First question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of one type of reality over the other?
Sure. So I mentioned this a little bit when we were talking through the different types of reality, and I'll bring that slide back up. We'll go back to it here. The main thing is the advantages of VR is it allows for a completely immersive situation, and so it allows for really almost losing yourself in that environment, which it can allow for in an enterprise solution. It can allow for really driving to finding the different issues with a CAD drawing or finding how this can work. One of the disadvantages, obviously, it completely blocks all your senses, and so you have no availability to understand around the real world where you are or where you're moving, and that can lead to a complication that you have to be in a cleared room, that sort of thing. So VR is definitely the most it's the most involved of any of the devices. Augmented reality, one of the main advantages, obviously, is that you can have real-time information visible without having to look elsewhere. So again, like I said, you can be hands-free working on a device and then see the information without having to go find the instruction book or hold a phone in a certain position so that someone can see it. It's really in a situation where you can actually have kind of that full tactile environment while also getting information that's pertinent. Disadvantage of that, obviously, is it's merely a heads-up display, or it's merely a singular view. It's not fully immersive. And then mixed reality, again, one of the great advantages is it's using the best of both of the previous two. Disadvantage, the technology is still very much taking a long time to get there.
Okay, my next question is a two-part question, and it is augmented virtual reality useful for training? And if so, do you have experience in this type of application?
That's a great point. We actually utilize training we've had customers utilize the AR glasses for training before, and we actually do utilize it with our training services as well with Integrated. The trick there, though, is that the user has to be understanding of how this is going to be used as a training device, as well as the tools to create the training content have to be prepared for utilizing them on the device. So we have some experience with it. It's not our most frequent experience, but we definitely do have some experience with it.
Okay, let's see. Just skipping around a bit here to try to get some more questions in. What kind of smart glasses does Techsite utilize?
Sure. Yep. We utilize the Vuzix M400s. So I will bring that slide up here. So we actually utilize the Vuzix M400s right here. We've just seen that those have been the most capable at the moment for the AR glasses that we have. Google Glass, we've tested those as well. We like them, but it's just taking a little bit more time to get kind of rolled out. And then we've also utilized the RealWear HMT1s for those who want the more robust device. But we definitely use the Vuzix M400s the most. That's these ones right here in the center.
Okay. Let's see. I think we might have time for one more question. And let's see. Okay, on the last slide, you referred to steps to success. How do I get started on the journey with AR/VR?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the biggest things is making sure that you get in contact with us, and we can help drive towards utilizing it with us, but as well as just contact, create that strong business case. So understanding how this can be used, and we can help you along with that, and how we can actually save some money ultimately in the long run from reducing downtime and driving towards that. So really, it's creating that strong business case and getting someone hyped inside. So one of the best ways to have new technologies like this take off within an organization is to have someone who's a huge proponent of it internally. And so, again, we have some people in our organization that we've done that, as well as driving towards productivity in your organization.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. I think that's all the time that we're going to have for questions today. So thanks to all of our attendees for their participation. And if we were unable to answer your question during today's live event, we'll send you a response via email. And as a reminder for our attendees, within the next few days, you can access this presentation on demand at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section. And you'll also receive an email with a link to the presentation, as well as a link to our application brief, Enable Real-Time Technical Support in Your DC with Techsite. And there's also a Techsite brochure and video in the related content area of this live event. So on behalf of Honeywell Intelligrated, thank you for attending today's On the Move webinar, and thank you to Mike for presenting. We hope you can join us for our next webinar in our March series, Pallet Conveyance, Let AMRs Do the Heavy Lifting, on March 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. Registration information is available on our website at sps.honeywell.com by clicking on the resources link under the automation support section. So thanks again for attending, and have a great afternoon.